Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking the ultimate shortcut to understanding a huge public relations crisis, one that really shook a major evangelical broadcasting network right here in America. We're diving into this big controversy, an explosive interview, an immediate demand for removal from a very influential media leader, and then the whole public spectacle that just unfolded from there.
That's right. This is a custom deep dive, really focusing on the source material surrounding this confrontation.
Yeah.
We've got two key figures in Christian media, Joni Lamb, co-founder of the incredibly influential Dyer Ministry,
Right.
and Laura Lynn, who's a very well-known media personality herself. Our sources really lay out the high-stakes drama that got kicked off by just one single video.
And this video, it went viral almost instantly, didn't it? It featured Laura Lynn interviewing a guest, Debbie Lenhart.
Debbie Lenhart, yeah.
And Lenhart was discussing this specific internal audit. It was being called, publicly at least, a forensic investigation with Pete. But the legitimacy of that whole thing was immediately contested by the Lamb family and their organization.
Before we go deeper into the story today, we would appreciate if you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on further stories. Also like and comment your thought.
So our mission here is kind of twofold.
Yeah.
First, we really need to synthesize the crucial details from that interview, the one that caused all the fuss.
Okay.
But maybe more importantly, we need to analyze the attempt to suppress it, Dyer's attempt, which came under intense scrutiny, and figure out why that effort to control the story actually did the exact opposite, why it amplified everything.
Yeah, that's the core of it. Joni Lamb immediately made what our sources are calling a bold demand for this interview, which was already going viral, to be taken down, like right now. Her team sent out these urgent removal requests, YouTube, other platforms.
And what's really fascinating is just how fast that reaction was compared to how the content was initially spreading. I mean, while Joni's team was hammering YouTube, the material was already being copied, aired everywhere. Laura Lynn herself noted it was already up on at least, 8 platforms?
The platforms.
The speed of that takedown attempt, it just signaled, high-level panic.
So that leads us right to the central question, doesn't it? What specific claims, what details in that interview were so threatening, so sensitive, that the demand to remove it actually became a way bigger story? More defining, really, than the original claims themselves.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where should we start? Maybe with the catalyst itself.
Yeah, let's start there. Because the initial shockwave was surprisingly quiet. The interview itself, it wasn't full of shouting or wild accusations.
Right, not what you might expect.
No. Our sources point out the guest, Debbie Lenhart, spoke very deliberately. Slowly, even. She grounded her points in, procedural claims.
Yeah.
Things about financial processes, administrative stuff.
And that measured pace, that actually gave it this undeniable weight, didn't it?
Exactly. It wasn't just yelling. It felt methodical. That careful delivery, I think that's key to why it hit so hard. It wasn't outrage talking. It was like she was reading an itemized list of discrepancies. And that created this really powerful contrast, the quiet, sort of technical nature of the claims versus the huge reputation of the institution being discussed.
Precisely. And the specific content that really landed, it included the guest describing missing documents, things related to internal processes.
Okay, missing documents.
Also, unusual delays in providing specific information, during this audit process. And she testified about key individuals who apparently just refused to answer straightforward, necessary questions.
And you have to think about the audience here, the learner's perspective. We're talking longtime viewers, supporters of the ministry. For them, that's where the tension really started to build. They didn't need some screaming headline. They recognized those administrative gaps she was talking about, accounts of dates, who was where, when.
Right.
It just didn't quite line up with the official story they'd been hearing for years. So that feeling that something important was being revealed, it came directly from that pattern of, procedural inconsistencies.
Yeah.
It suggested maybe a failure of integrity, not just, a one-off mistake.
And this exposure, it immediately created a ripple effect. It went way beyond just casual chatter on social media.
Oh, yeah.
It moved into, closed groups, private discussions. It started challenging these deeply held assumptions among ministry insiders, staff members, even longstanding donors. The video basically exposed what looked like cracks in this very trusted, very familiar narrative. And that signaled pretty clearly this wasn't a controversy they could just manage quietly behind the scenes.
Which leads us right into part 2. The reaction. the corporate reaction. Because for Joni Lamb, this interview clearly wasn't just a discussion about, procedures.
No, definitely not.
She saw the video as, well, an existential threat, something that could challenge decades of her and Marcus's reputation, seriously disrupt the ministry's operations, and maybe even undo years of work they'd built.
And internally, inside Dyer headquarters, the response was described as chaotic, immediate.
On a fire drill.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Sources described it like that. Joni issued what they called an urgent, firm directive, basically. Get the video down now.
Yeah.
The focus was purely on protection, control, and trying to manage the potential damage to their reputation before it got worse.
Okay, but here's where it gets, really fascinating, right? The paradoxical result of trying to suppress it so urgently. The very act of trying to erase the video basically guaranteed it would reach a much, much wider audience than it ever would have otherwise.
Absolutely. The Streisand effect in full force.
Exactly. Screenshots started flying around, clips got mirrored instantly onto other platforms, like you said, and the whole conversation shifted from, what did she say, to, wait, why are they trying so hard to hide this?
And that internal crisis was apparently very real. Staff reported seeing, rapid, high-level phone calls, hurried meetings, legal briefings happening fast. They were drafting public statements, then pulling them back, rewriting them multiple times. Lawyers were brought in immediately, reportedly working through the night sometimes.
So the team knew. They knew their efforts weren't really working, or were even backfiring.
It seems they understood, intuitively at least, that the containment efforts were having this secondary effect. Every single move they made to try and control the information just amplified the public's interest. It just drew more eyes to it.
So, okay, amidst all that internal chaos, what was the defense strategy? How did they actually justify trying to yank the video so aggressively?
Well, publicly, Joni's team argued that the content was spreading dangerous misinformation. That was creating confusion among their loyal audience.
Okay, the misinformation angle.
Yeah, that was the core message. They emphasized their actions were about defending objective truth, protecting innocent reputations. It was not, they stressed, censorship just for censorship's sake.
So they framed the video itself as what? Reckless? Irresponsible?
Exactly. Reckless, potentially libelous even. They pointed to what they called unverified and misleading claims about that internal audit.
But that messaging, it kind of struggled to catch on, didn't it? Especially in today's, decentralized digital world.
It really did. The second the public saw what looked like a heavy-handed attempt to just shut down the conversation.
Yeah.
Bam. The debate instantly polarized. It created these two very distinct camps, nationally even.
Yeah, let's talk about that divide. Perspective one, what was that?
Okay, perspective one really centered on transparency and courage. This was championed by Laura Lynn's supporters. They praised her, basically. Saw her as willing to host difficult conversations, ask the hard questions.
Like a hero figure, almost.
Kind of, yeah. A voice for accountability within what many saw as a traditionally closed-off system.
And their core belief was, what, trust the public?
Pretty much. Trust the public to decide for themselves. They admired Laura Lynn's stance. The guests spoke freely, let the information out, and the answer to potentially bad info isn't silence, it's more discussion.
Right. And that perspective really hit home for people who are already kind of wary of those carefully managed official narratives from big institutions.
Definitely resonated there.
Yeah.
But then you have the other side. Perspective two. This was all about responsibility and protection. And this defined Joni Lamb's supporters.
Okay.
They saw the video as deeply irresponsible. They argued it contained unverified claims, possibly malicious ones, that could do real, irreparable harm to the families involved, to the ministry's legacy built over decades.
Well, let's pause there for a second, just to play devil's advocate, like our sources require us to do, right? Consider the nuance.
Okay.
If the ministry genuinely believed those claims were, say, legally actionable, libelous, or just flat out wrong based on faulty information, wasn't the responsible thing to do, maybe both ethically and financially, to try and stop it from spreading immediately?
That's a fair point. You have to acknowledge that viewpoint.
Yeah, because many people clearly felt Joni's actions were completely justified, that it was a measure of responsibility, her duty, really, to safeguard the ministry's integrity against what they saw as an unfair attack.
Precisely. So the polarization wasn't just, Team Joni versus Team Laura Lynn. It was this fundamental clash over what responsibility even means in the media landscape today.
And it didn't stay just on social media, did it?
Oh, no. It escalated quickly beyond just online arguments. Journalists started digging. They were looking into the specific claims about that forensic investigation.
Right, the details of the audit itself.
Exactly. And that pushed the whole controversy into mainstream news outlets, commentaries. It became a much bigger story.
So the debate ballooned, basically. It started touching on these huge societal issues. Things like freedom of speech limits, especially in religious broadcasting.
And the standard of accountability we expect from public figures, especially those controlling significant resources.
And just leadership in the digital age generally. How do you handle this kind of challenge? This whole thing became a very public, like real-time case study in how authority reacts when its power to control information is suddenly seriously challenged.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the whole incident really served as this dramatic lesson in modern media literacy, didn't it?
How so?
Well, it just proved that in today's digital age, any attempt to control information, especially if it looks like suppression, often just guarantees that the information becomes impossible to ignore.
Right. The cover-up or the attempted cover-up becomes the main event.
Exactly. The attempt to delete the video created the definitive narrative. It ended up overshadowing the actual claims made in the video from many people.
So thinking long-term now, what does all this mean for the professional landscape, for the people involved? Because the core issue totally shifted, didn't it? It moved way beyond the original content about the audit to how the leaders reacted when they came under scrutiny.
Yeah, the long-term impact on reputations is huge.
Oh,
Probably still playing out. For Laura Lynn, her credibility, well, it grew significantly, at least among that segment of the audience that really values transparency, maybe journalistic courage.
Solidified her brand almost.
It kind of did, yeah. Positioned her as someone willing to ask those uncomfortable questions.
But then, simultaneously, Joni Lamb's leadership came under this new, intense scrutiny. Her legacy is now being evaluated not just by, her decades of organizational success,
Right.
but specifically by how she responded to this digital crisis. Sources mention significant challenges inside Dyer itself, too, like longtime staff wrestling with the conflict, and probably a whole new layer of caution needed in all their public communications now.
And this whole situation, it just throws into sharp relief how incredibly fragile public trust can be.
Yeah.
You had longtime viewers, loyal supporters, suddenly grappling with these really difficult, conflicting emotions. Loyalty to what felt like a spiritual home versus this gnawing curiosity, this discomfort raised by the discrepancies that came out.
So trust, which maybe was just implicit before, taken for granted.
Exactly. Suddenly it had to be actively re-earned, defended, on both sides, really.
It really became a kind of litmus test, didn't it? The whole controversy just showed how quickly confidence in big institutions, in authority, can be shaken in our hyper-connected world where, everyone's basically a publisher and information just moves at lightning speed.
And this episode really demonstrates that shift away from passive consumers. People aren't just sitting back and receiving a message anymore. They're active participants.
How do you mean?
Well, they're involved in figuring out if something's true, judging the actions of the people delivering the message. Like we said, the attempt to remove the video ended up defining the perception of the whole situation just as much, maybe more, than the video's actual claims.
Right. Public perception shifted because people weren't just evaluating who spoke, but who acted, how aggressively, and trying to figure out why. This whole situation really underscores an amazing fact about today. One single voice, maybe just armed with some procedural facts, can challenge a massive multi-million-dollar authority in ways that would have been unimaginable even 10, 15 years ago.
It completely changes the game. The whole calculus of institutional communication, it's different now.
It really is.
So maybe the final thought, the question for you, the listener, to really consider, based on synthesizing all these sources, is this. When public trust is tested like this, and you face that choice, protecting a hard-earned reputation versus revealing potentially uncomfortable procedural flaws, should authority lean towards discretion, calculated protection, or should it lean towards radical, immediate transparency, even if it's messy?